He's shaking hands with the air, taking orders from the Easter Bunny.
Oh boy. Matt and Michael Knowles are disinvited to speak at St. Thomas University, but guess who was warmly welcomed? George Soros tweets out yesterday's conspiracy theory. Turns out he really is overhauling the entire U.S. criminal justice system. And finally, Pope Francis plants another tree. Well, he is Francis, and upon this rock star, he's still building his church.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Matt. This is the Remnant Underground. Have you ever noticed how the self-righteous paragons of virtue, the critics of Christian patriots everywhere, really seem to enjoy accusing us of harboring fascistic tendencies, when actually they themselves are the ones who are utterly intolerant of any dissenting points of view? It's kind of an ironic thing, but it's true. Let me give you an example. Last month, I was supposed to speak at the Catholic University, Catholic in quotes, of St. Thomas here in St. Paul. Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire was also to speak at the same conference, and the topic was how Catholic universities are no longer, well, too terribly Catholic anymore, preferring the creed of climate change, I guess, over the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the woke ideology of the new Catholic Church that we've all been slogging through for way too many years. Now, not surprisingly, that conference was canceled at the last moment. In fact, I didn't even prepare notes for that event, right?
No, you didn't. I have it on record.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to happen.
All along, I was saying to my producer, this is just stupid. Not going to happen. There's no way that they are going to let someone who is actually a faithful Catholic speak at their Catholic university. So first of all, Michael Knowles dropped. He was disinvited on the grounds that he might, of course, offend the LGBT community at the Catholic University of St. Thomas. And I was actually pretty offended by that. Do you remember? I was like, wait a minute, hang on. Michael Knowles he's considered too Catholic for St. Thomas University, and Michael Matt isn't. What's going on here? So I thought about just disinviting myself, just pulling out on principle. But I'll just wait and see if they greenlight the evil, hateful, racist Michael Matt to speak at St. Thomas. Well, of course, the verdict came down. Michael Matt's opinions do not, quote, align with the St. Thomas conviction statements on dignity and diversity, because I had supposedly made some derogatory statements, you see, against the LBGTQ plus, whatever. They had a whole list of letters there. And Muslim and also black communities. I had said some bad things, some derogatory racist statements, evidently. And so the Department of Campus Life had been kind enough to cite the young guy, by the way, who invited us from the student group that invited me to speak. Fantastic guy. He really went to bat for us. I'm not going to name him because I want him to keep doing what he's trying to do, which is, a good thing. But he went to bat. He said, where exactly did Michael Matt do these dastardly things? And the Department of Campus Life cited a couple of offending RTV videos. First, this one is on the LGBT community, where I had been homophobic, apparently. I'll let you decide if you think that's accurate.
Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine, effective, and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstances can they be approved.
Michael Sam, from your home state, the football player, revealed that he was gay, first in the NFL. And you saw the celebration from the president, the first lady, and others saying what a courageous step that was. How did you view it?
Good for him. I would have no sense of judgment on him. God bless you. I don't think. Look, the same Bible that tells us that teaches us well about the virtue of chastity and the virtue of fidelity in marriage also tells us not to judge people. So I would say, bravo.
You see the problem here? This is completely irrational. What we've got here is chaos at the level of the parish, all throughout the church now. And in this case, it's not caused by the gay musicians, but by a crisis of authority in the church. It does no good to shout down these gay guys. They're the ones who've been given a green light to do what they're doing by the Catholic Church, the human element of the Catholic Church as it now is functioning. So what are you yelling at them for?
Whoa, pretty vicious stuff. To actually be defending the LGBT community from the lying.
Tell the truth to the LGBT
Just trying to tell the truth. This was at the time, by the way, over at the AOTM, the Argument of the Month, where I had challenged 400 guys, including our pastor, on that very question, saying it's not their fault. It's not their fault. They're not getting told the truth by Catholic priests, by Catholic universities. Very, very sympathetic to their plight, because they're like, what does the Catholic Church even teach about homosexual acts? They're not being told. Nobody's bothering to tell them, which apparently is the reason people like me and people like Michael Knowles aren't allowed to speak on campus, because we would surely speak the truth about what the Catholic Church actually teaches. You know, officially, dogmatically, in her official catechisms, what she teaches. You know, the stuff that the University of St. Thomas is too cowardly and too anti-Catholic to even speak about, to even reference anymore. They're embarrassed of it, the teachings of the catechisms of the Catholic Church on sexual morality. And that's just the funniest doggone thing, isn't it? About these new and improved Catholics from the Church of Accompaniment. It's all based on a lie. So they pat themselves on the back because they're going out to the peripheries, don't you see, to meet the marginalized of society. You see what that is, actually? You know what that is. Francis this is his entire pontificate, going to the peripheries. All it is newspeak for the abolition of the very idea of sin, of judgment, of heaven and hell. They don't talk about it anymore, do they? So the people on the peripheries are the folks that aren't following any rules. And so they're ostracized, as they've always been, for their own good, for the salvation of their own souls. It used to be, love the sinner, right? Hate the sin. But now it's not. See, it's changed. Now it's just love the sinner and the sin. In fact, sin doesn't exist, does it? University of St. Thomas in St. Paul. Sin really doesn't exist for you guys, does it? Other than failing to recycle your tin cans. I get that, yeah. And smoking cigarettes, I'm sure. That's a mortal sin. But other than that, what would your 10 commandments be? What is it, 2 commandments now? Where are you guys down to now? Which ones do you still believe in? God help us, you weren't always this lame, St. Thomas. Wasn't that long ago. I was one of the students over at St. Thomas. I was at the University of St. Thomas back in the 80s. Catholic stalwart, fantastic professors who were proud of their Catholic faith. Men such as Father George Welsbacher taught us at St. Thomas University that in charity, Catholics were obliged to share what the Church actually teaches. In charity, that was our obligation. What does the Church teach based on revealed truth, based on natural law, St. Thomas? Maybe you've heard of that. Maybe you've seen pictures. And we were taught in the 1980s still that if I or anyone else were to disregard the 10 commandments of God and refuse to repent and die in a state of refusing to repent, that we would go to hell. You remember that? Hell? I know you guys don't talk about that at St. Thomas anymore, but yeah, back in the 80s, your professors were still talking about things like heaven and hell. You see, and if you disregard the laws of God, laws of church, laws of nature, the moral code of Christianity, if you disregarded that and thought yourself better than that, you're going to do whatever the damn well hell you please, whether you were homosexual or heterosexual, then you would end up on the peripheries of Christian society, which, as you may remember, University of St. Thomas, Christian society based their law and order on the 10 commandments of God, on natural law, and the laws of the church. But you've kind of gotten away from that, haven't you guys? And you can think of any number of examples of how ridiculous it is if you slow down and think about this. if I'm unfaithful to my wife, do you actually think you're doing me a favor by telling me that you accept me as I am? Just don't change. Because I accept everyone just as they are. Do you actually think that's a good thing to do? Do you think it's a charitable thing to do? Leave people in ignorance? Leave people in habitual sin? Where they could become, as I say, it could become a habit. They could die that way. They could go to hell. Remember, I'm sorry. I shouldn't bring hell up. I know nobody goes there. It probably doesn't even exist for you guys at St. Thomas, right? Well, and if it does exist, there's nobody there but smokers and Adolf Hitler anyway, so why even worry about it, right? But that actually, not too long ago, was the whole point of the Catholic Church. You might remember, to lovingly and charitably inform the sinners of what the church, when I say sinners, I'm talking about me first and foremost, all of us, to tell us what the church teaches is necessary for the salvation of our soul. That was how you met people at the peripheries, telling them what they must do to save their souls. But you see, that was then. We're now part of a new and improved church. We're now part of the Church of Accompaniment, which means we're very, very much vested in making people feel good about themselves, no matter what they're doing. Today, saving the planet is far more important than saving the souls of the faithful. And really the only moral code a place like St. Thomas University, only moral code that they recognize, apparently from what they say, is diversity and inclusion. Inclusion, well, there's equity too. Got to talk about equity. You don't even know what it is. But if you're talking about those things, you don't have to talk about death, judgment, heaven, and hell. You don't have to talk about the 10 Commandments of God. You don't have to talk about sin. You don't talk about any of that stuff, because that's all medieval. We've evolved way beyond that at a Catholic university. So I'd like to offer the university, because I'm fair-minded, trying to be a good sport, and I want to offer the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, this wonderful golden opportunity to protect now the larger community from the infamous Michael Matt, and to protect the community from yours truly on a permanent basis. This is what we're going to do. I have links to both of those offending videos, which were cited by the University of St. Thomas as proof that I am racist and homophobic. Both the links are down in the description. And I would challenge anyone from St. Thomas University in St. Paul, Minnesota, to point to a single instance where where Michael Matt said anything at all derogatory of the communities in question. Anything at all. And if you produce that, I will shut down this Remnant TV show for good. And I know, as I said, there's a lot of good folks, good friends and allies that watch this program who are not traditional Catholic, not even Catholic at all. But this negatively impacts you too. It negatively impacts all of us. It negatively impacts the common good of the entire society, of our entire civilization, whether you're Catholic or not. Because if even the Catholic universities now, who were once part of the most recognized moral authority on the face of the earth, Mother Church, the oldest, the largest Christian denomination, if even Catholic universities have taken it upon themselves to give up on God's law, to never mention it, to act as though he doesn't exist, other than maybe with flowers and puppies and feeling good, but there's no moral code that one must follow in order to serve God. If even Catholic universities are doing this, then why shouldn't all institutions of higher learning follow the same course? How the Catholic Church goes is eventually how the world is going to go. And that's what's happening, certainly in academia. At Westminster College, for example, in Salt Lake City. Students are now studying pornographic films together and discussing sex as an art form, as you see on the screen. And why is this happening? Because the largest Christian denomination, because the Catholic Church has simply surrendered. And it's been going on for a long time, so I don't even blame St. Thomas. St. Thomas is following the lead of the whole revolution that's been going on for a long, long, long time. That's why this paper, The Remnant, has been in operation for 50, 60 years, because there's been a war going on against the Catholic Church. First, they took out the Mass, the liturgy of our fathers, swapping out the altar of sacrifice for the table. And if you don't have a sacrifice, well, what are you going to do? I guess let's roll out the liturgical Sesame Street that nobody under 50 years of age today bothers attending anymore. There's no future liturgically for the Catholic Church. So that's where the liturgical revolution ended up. We're watching it happen right before our eyes now. But years ago, then they went ahead and stripped Catholic schools of their Catholic raison d'etre. And I mean that. The reason to be Catholic school was Catholic. Well, let's remove that. Let's not talk about that because that'll alienate some of our friends who aren't Catholic. And again, this show is such a great example of the stupidity of that. We come out here every week proudly proclaiming that we are Catholics, not only Catholics, but traditional Catholics. And we have these great discussions with folks who are not Catholic, who are not traditionalists, folks who are Protestants, some people who aren't even believers. That's the way the whole Catholic Church used to work, just like this show. You don't ostracize anybody. You have a conversation with everybody, lovingly, in charity. You tell them what you believe. You share the truth with them out of love for your fellow man. That's how the Catholic Church used to be. So why are they taking it upon themselves in the new and improved Catholic Church and Catholic universities to shut all that down is beyond me. But it's not working. And the result has been the same for these places as what happened when they started trying to update the religious life. Now, Francis is at full-on war with religious life at this point. Well, a long time ago, the modernist revolution in the church, modernist being just globalists with theology degrees, by the way, it's all part of the globalist move that we see now. Get the church out of the way so we can establish the brotherhood of man. And so to do that, they got rid of those armies of nuns and sisters who used to walk the airport. You couldn't take a flight when I was a kid without seeing dozens of Catholic sisters in full habit going about their business, traveling around the world, going to the missions, you know. They manned the Catholic schools and the Catholic hospitals. Remember them? And here in St. Paul, I was born in a hospital, St. Luke's, but all the Catholic hospitals, they just shut down St. Joe's. They're all gone. We lost all of our hospitals. We lost everything thanks to the attitude of the new improved Catholics, you know, who are more apt to have Nancy Pelosi speak at their campus than Michael Knowles. But regardless, we remember the nuns, and guess what? Guess what the nuns used to do? The nuns used to go on the peripheries to such an extent that they ran hospitals and orphanages and schools for free because they believed in the corporal works of mercy. That's what the old rigid Catholic Church used to do. Millions of penguins dedicating their lives to God and to neighbor, working for free in the hospitals and schools. That's what it used to look like. You see what's happening? The church is literally just ceasing to exist. It's just disappearing. Like the Catholic faith on Catholic campuses, disappearing. And you think I exaggerate? Maybe those of you who are not Catholic, it can't be that bad. Although I don't think anybody actually. I mean, looking at what Francis is up to, you get it. I'm not exaggerating. I'll give you an example. 90 years ago or so, the Catholic Church pretty much took a strong stand and stopped classroom sex education dead in its tracks and contraception dead in its tracks with what? A little encyclical by Pope Pius XI called Casti Connubii. The little Pope in Rome just thundered out Catholic teaching on something like contraception. And the church was so powerful in the lives of the faithful that he was able to tell them what God wants them to do behind the locked doors of their bedrooms. That was in the 1930s. That was the power of the church to lead souls toward God, toward salvation. Now what's happening today? America's public schools right now are teaching first graders about transsexualism, gender ideology, right? Most of the bishops are babbling on and on about Laudato Si, encyclical on climate change. Could they possibly be any more irrelevant to the lives of real people if they tried? Now, just as a little thought experiment, let's imagine ourselves, just imagine yourself, standing up in front of a classroom full of first graders, and you sang to the little boy in the first row, "You know, Johnny, I think you might be a little girl. What do you think about that? Today, Johnny, we're going to talk about changing your private parts and tell you about what that's like." Now, I can't even continue with that example without feeling soiled, imagining myself talking to a child like that, you know? Nobody can. No civilized, sane, moral person can even imagine that conversation. Now, just imagine that's happening for real every day in classrooms all over this country, in schools, in the dioceses and archdioceses of Catholic bishops. Pardon my French, but where the hell are the Catholic bishops on this? Where are you guys? What are you waiting for? Are you just going to sit around and leave this fundamental, this battle for the souls? No. Not just the souls of little Johnny in the first row, but the body, the psychological health of little Johnny, his entire life, his entire physical, moral, and spiritual well-being. You're just going to leave that up to chance and see what happens? Just zip it up? Maybe leave it to a mom like this to fight your fights for you?
If schools are allowed to teach gender identity to elementary children, then I, as an elementary educator, should also have the freedom to teach them about how God was not confused when He designed them. I should be able to teach them about Jesus and how God created them, a boy or a girl, on purpose and for a purpose.
Now that's all very nice, and thank God. Thank God for moms like that, right, Your Excellencies? Isn't that great that moms are out there fighting the fight that you should be fighting? I know, we get it. You guys just don't have time to defend the children. Because you're really busy with far more pressing issues, such as this.
Calling on the world's faithful to join the fight to solve the climate crisis. 40 religious leaders gathered at the Vatican on Monday to add their voice to the growing chorus calling for world leaders to take real action to tackle the crisis. The Catholic Pope, Pope Francis, called the meeting. We now have the support of the world's leading spiritual figures.
It's almost like they've been paid off, isn't it? Like somebody bought them, bought their silence, right? Because who in their right mind would be dinking around with these issues all the way over in the Vatican, you know? Get everybody together, there's got to be something we're going to do about climate change. Who does this unless you don't want to address the real issues that are affecting real people in real time in the real world? Unless you've lost faith in God and in His church. Why else would you be doing this? Unless you've been bought off. And you know something? I think maybe they have. Really, seriously, I think they have. And they have for a long time. Remember that WikiLeaks document dump back in 2016? You know, the one where it became obvious from the documents that George Soros' Open Society Policy Center had financed some 10,000 volunteers to help ensure that Pope Francis, when he was here in the United States visiting the U.S., that whole visit would become an opportunity, quote, for the Catholic Church to shift focus to refugees, over-incarceration, and the rights of illegal immigrants. This was the visit where the Pope had this wonderful opportunity. He's talking to Congress, he's talking to the entire Congress, House and Senate, when he could have brought up the law of God and decided not to. Standing in front of Pelosi and everybody else, he decided not to. I think the closest he got to God was citing the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
In the land of the free, at the home of the brave.
But nothing about Christ. You know? And all of this just is so familiar from what we're seeing from a guy from the Globalists, from Klaus Schwab, all these guys, what they're doing, getting rid of the Catholic Church, right? George Soros, how many times have I played that clip where he says that he thinks that Trump is a phenomenon that's very dangerous that would disappear in 2020. Well, what do you know? It happened. So Soros lost around in 2016, but then he comes roaring back in 2020. They got rid of the Patriot guy. He liked to talk about God and fire off fireworks at Mount Rushmore and make people feel something for them. Got rid of him. And then they gave us this clown.
Well, there were a series of bizarre moments at the White House Easter egg roll. This was just one of them when President Biden answered a reporter's question on Afghanistan when he was suddenly whisked away, get this, by the Easter Bunny.
Pakistan should not, and Afghanistan should be. Oh, the Easter Bunny, Mr. President.
And while that Easter Bunny is distracting his puppet president, George Soros is out on Twitter. You know what he's doing out on Twitter this week? He's bragging about how he's doing to this country, what he did to Ukraine, what he tried to do to Hungary, what he's doing all over the world. He's bragging how he gave millions of dollars to Soros Justice Fellows. That's what they're called. The Soros Justice Fellows here in the United States in 2021, last year. Now, what he's doing, people say, Soros, that's just like well, you're an anti-Semite, first of all, but also it's such a stupid conspiracy theory. If you're saying that, you simply are not paying attention to what George Soros himself is saying, or Klaus Schwab. These guys are very, very forthcoming now. You know why? Because the Catholic Church is not standing in their way anymore. Matter of fact, it's in their pocket. So Soros comes out on Twitter this week, and he says, I'm financing documentary filmmakers. And he's proud of this. He's awarding them money, millions of dollars. I'm financing lawyers. I'm financing grassroots organizers. I'm financing policy advocates, journalists, authors. And you know what we're doing? Ha! You're going to love it. We're reforming the entire criminal justice system of the United States of America. We're stopping the deportation of illegal immigrants, he says. Right down here below. Click the link and read about it. Look at the tweet on the screen. I guess it's over here. He's admitting all this. He's exposing, at one point it gets particularly amusing, he's exposing far-right sheriffs for the punishment of justice, which really perpetuates cycles of violence and over-policing. George Soros is installing prosecutors. You all heard this, I know. But they're called the Soros prosecutors. They're in Los Angeles. They're in Chicago. Why do you think Chicago is just the murder capital of the world now? Why do you think there's so much crime, so much shooting? You know why it is? Because there's a Soros prosecutor in there. And these prosecutors would do what? They refuse to prosecute violent crime in America. George Soros, in other words, and his group of globalists and his allies at Davos, the World Economic Forum, they're undermining law and order in your country so that they can reset this country in the image and likeness of globalism. That's what they're doing. Now, you know this, but look at the tweet. I'm old enough to remember when all of this about Soros was a conspiracy theory. Wasn't that long ago. They're totally, absolutely out of the closet now. This is real. And it's the sort of thing that's been going on for years.
Explosive new emails reveal plotting to infiltrate the Catholic Church. They're among the hacked emails of Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta, published by WikiLeaks. Jason Calvi brings us up to date tonight.
The bombshell email says there needs to be a Catholic Spring in which Catholics themselves demand the end of a Middle Ages dictatorship and the beginning of a little democracy. Is contraceptive coverage an issue around which that could happen?
And this is a kind of Henry VIII trying to reshape the church in his image.
But think about this. Think of the games that are being played with the Catholic Church to undermine, weaken, and destroy the influence of the church in society.
The first stage of the Synod on Synodality began with this Mass celebrated in St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pope proposed ways to begin the local phase of the Synod, which will take place in every Catholic diocese around the world.
This is the Synodal Church of Francis in action in Germany, where they're really drinking deeply from the Kool-Aid of Francis' Synodal Church.
Ein Gottesdienst wie dieser wäre vor Jahren noch undenkbar gewesen für Kardinal Reinhard Marx. Doch am Sonntag hat er eine Messe mit der Münchner Queergemeinde gefeiert. Der katholische Kardinal hat sich dabei für den Umgang seiner Kirche mit queeren Menschen entschuldigt.
There's your synodal church in action. They were listening, and that's what they came up with. But the good news, friends, many bishops are looking at what's happening. They're looking at that, and they're going, okay, maybe the traditionalists were right. Maybe they were right. Maybe they had a point. And if we don't take a stand now, Francis is going to accompany this church straight into hell.
Well, more than 70 church leaders from around the world are issuing a warning to bishops in Germany. In an open letter, they say proposed reforms under the country's synodal path may lead to schism. Last February, a German assembly drafted challenges to church teaching on homosexuality and the celibate all-male priesthood. And joining us now is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, head of the Archdiocese of San Francisco. Can you explain what the German synodal path is?
The German synodal path is a multi-year process of talks and proposals with bishops, other clergy, and laity about what they call reforms of the church, which are actually challenges to long established and settled doctrine.
Now, is that enough? Of course it's not enough. But it's something. It's a start. And remember, these men have been practicing, they've been hog-tied and shackled to the chains of collegiality for a long time. They've been drinking deeply from the Vatican II vat for a long time. But despite all that, they're beginning to see it as something that's really, really wrong now in the Catholic Church. It's just going to cease to exist if somebody doesn't tap the brakes. So that was a tap. This is a tap of the brakes, but a welcome one, even if it doesn't slam on the brakes, as I would like to do. But at least some bishops are coming to realize that this has nothing to do anymore with renewal in the Catholic Church. This is destroying the church. This is the church removing any obstacle, removing herself, hoisting the white flag of surrender to the world, and removing her influence as an impasse in the path of a Christophobic new global political order. Now, you know this. The church was already a global institution. It was already universal, wasn't it? If you're going to take over, if you're going to establish a new world order, the first order of business is to remove the one that's there now. And the one that was there now was that of Jesus Christ the King. It was utterly Christocentric. In order to obliterate that, to remove it and supplant it, you need an utterly Christophobic replacement. And that's the New World Order. And the Vatican has been playing ball with these guys, with these demons, for an awful long time.
The Pope and the pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage Irish rock star. Huge supporters of the Irish Family Planning Association. Bono helped to repeal the 8th Amendment, for Pete's sakes, thus legalizing abortion on demand, and he used his status to promote Ireland's legalization of gay marriage, of course. So here's the question. When it's so obvious what he is, why is the Pope out there on TV hugging Bono?
So what this is full-on political revolution against the kingship of Jesus Christ. But yeah, of course, guys like me are no longer welcome at so-called Catholic universities to speak anymore. Many people now are opting out of this educational system altogether. St. Thomas thinking we can't go speak over there. Well, my goodness, Catholics probably shouldn't even bother. Just like we shouldn't bother going to most Catholic grade schools, the few that are left anymore. The AP now is reporting, guess what? COVID backfired. The whole pandemic plan backfired when it comes to education. The AP is reporting that the pandemic has ushered in the most rapid rise in homeschooling the U.S. has ever seen. You want to see the hand of God in something? There you go. Even after schools reopen now, many parents across this country have chosen to continue directing their own children's education at home. And therein lies the salvation of millions of kids. That's already happening. A few weeks from right now, our team is going to be over in France walking with 15,000 young Catholic freedom fighters from all over Europe. They survived COVID. Somehow these young families survived the reign of terror. And their dedication now to the old Mass, to family, to country, to patriotism, to Christ the King, puts all these young people directly in the path of the Christophobic New World Order. The political and spiritual lockdown is collapsing because we refused to comply, not just over 2 years of COVID, but 50, 60 years of revolution in the church. We refuse to comply. We know this is war for God, for family, for country, and it's just getting started. Because the future, dear friends, belongs to those, as they say, who will be there to show up for it. And guess what? Our children, so help me God, are going to show up for it. With God as our witness, Pope Francis et al., our children will be there. What about yours?